we have Mr. Andrew Divoff.
Thanks for being here, guys.
Thank you for being here.
My pleasure.
I'm very happy I get a chance to talk with you. I am not going to
Make a wish.
no, I'm not going to make a wish because I already got mine. I get to sit down and chat with you, sir. And I know that there are people here that want to talk about Wishmaster. We're going to get to that. I want to start when I'm looking at the beginning of your career. I'm scrolling through the television shows that you were on, and Matlock, MacGyver, A-Team, Scarecrow and Mrs. King. These are all shows that existed, kids.
3 centuries ago.
And God, it's been... one of your very first roles was a small part on a TV show that didn't even make it a full season, Misfits of Science.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I keep noticing throughout your career, and this is something that happened with Misfits and then later on with Wishmaster, it seems like you play a part in these amazing things that were just ahead of their time at that moment, and unfortunately didn't quite keep going for whatever reason. What is that in projects that you pick that you think you find the sensibility of, this is new? What do you look for?
Well, I think, first of all, I have to give props to my agents and thank my agents for getting me into that. And of course, that was at the very beginning of the career, so it was, those are pretty much called no blinkers. If you blink, you might miss me. So, you know, and just, you know, just the sci-fi stuff, I was drawn to that. I'll give you a little quick story. When I was a kid, my mom told me, she said, "You're not going to watch horror. And by the way, The Wolfman is on tonight." So, okay. So that was my signal to sneak out of bed at about, 1 in the morning it was, and that was the first horror movie that I saw, was The Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr. Wow. And as a kid, can you imagine watching that? And even you guys, I think if you saw it today, you'd be blown away by the fact that the hair seems to grow right on his face as you're watching it. And so that process was called stop motion. And of course, obviously, with the CG and everything else, we progressed. But I was lucky enough to get into those. And then, of course, as an actor, you always have to look beyond what's on the paper. You know, find a backstory for the character. And so I was lucky enough. I was curious enough as a starting out actor to want to do that, to build sort of a foundation, you know, for the character.
Wonderful. As we're talking about building characters, I want to know, skipping ahead to Wishmaster, because we are at Sinister Creature Con, horror convention. So skipping ahead to the Djinn. I told you when I met you at your table yesterday that when I was younger, it took me a long time to realize that the actor who played the human and the Djinn were the same person. I just thought two people did an amazing job playing two sides of one character.
Oh, that's great. That's a wonderful compliment, by the way. Thank you.
You are well-deserved compliment, sir.
You, sir.
I want to know, in the process of that, how much of it was, did you approach it as the Bruce Wayne Batman scenario? Did you approach it as a Jekyll and Hyde, or did you see them as one person? What was it?
No, you know, I approached it as the Djinn, as a being who had done this before, but that certainly the two characters were split, were divided, were two different people. And I wanted to play him. I wanted, certainly when you saw the Djinn and going into this human thing, I wanted you to see almost the Djinn coming through the human facet of this being, as if, boy, this is a really uncomfortable mask. So I played it as if the human was the masked being, and the Djinn actually couldn't wait to get into his own skin.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
And was it in the script, the direction, or was it your acting choices to make him as sexual as he was?
You know,
I guess that's the best way I could put it, is
yeah,
he feels, you don't know if you're going to skin somebody or if you're going to make love to them. I want to know, was that in the script or is that you decision?
I suppose it was a kind of a melding of both. Again, nice compliment. I think when, especially when he's in the store and he's getting the new outfit, once having this human version, having adapted himself to Nathaniel Demarest, I suppose that he was thinking, well, let's have some fun. You know, let's go out a new suit, and, you know, and so I think that joy in being human, at least at the first part of him becoming Demarest, I think there had to be some joy in that. You had to see that in him, but then it got a little tiresome. As I said, he couldn't wait to get back into his own skin, get these things accomplished, get the wishes, and let me get the heck out.
That brings me to the voice. I've read, and in several interviews, that one of the things that got you going with the voice was sitting in your trailer alone, eating jelly beans,
Eating jelly
yourself in the
beans,
mirror.
yeah, and so I realized, so jelly beans, these particular ones were made with whey, which of course is a milk product, and so as opposed to clearing my throat, I would sort of let the membrane sort of build up with that phlegminess, and would never clear my throat. And so I liken it to the difference between a tailpipe on a motorcycle with holes in it and one that's brand new. You know, you can hear that throaty rev, you know. And so the first time in costume, we were out in Wilmington, and it's the scene, a beautiful scene with Reggie Bannister from Phantasm, you know him, beautiful guy, and Buck Flowers, rest in peace. That was the first time with the makeup on. And so they wanted to do a sort of a progressive thing where you saw that this thing, having just come out of the gemstone, it's going to take a while for his skin and for his body and for everything else to sort of come into place and come into color, if you will. If you remember, that was a sort of a very gray, very greenish version of what would become more of a dark orange, more of a reddish tone to the skin and so forth. But that first night, Robert Kurtzman, the director, told me, he said, why don't you go sit in your trailer and turn the lights off and just look at yourself in the mirror and play with the voice. Even at that time, excuse me, having already had the makeup on, excuse me, I was very nervous as to what would come out, what would it sound like. So I sat in the mirror and I noticed, having had a shake, a protein shake, I noticed that, wow, this voice started to come out gurgly, and I thought, okay, there's something here. Let's say about an hour after that, I think I got onto set and I got to work with Buck Flowers. And by the time I offer him, basically, I give him his wish, which was a horrible wish. He wishes for Reggie to die of cancer.
Just get cancer and die.
Yeah, just get cancer and die. Yeah, and so we played with that. I think at that time, I don't think the Djinn had ever smoked a cigarette, and so when he picked up that cigarette that Buck Flowers had left behind when he tore off, yeah, he was sort of immediately addicted.
I like that. It felt like you were picking something up familiar, but something brand new, and
Yes.
just, okay, I need to see what this is.
Yes, and he sort of smelled it and puffed on it, and he was hooked.
Now, horror has a history of amazing character designs with elaborate makeups. The Djinn is no different. Greg Nicotero, correct?
Yes, indeed. Greg Nicotero, Robert Kurtzman, Howard Berger, of course, can't beat. Mm-hmm.
Now, how long, how uncomfortable, what the details of you being in it? I want to know that. What was your reaction the first time you saw it? You saw yourself in it?
I saw drawings, and by the way, Robert Kurtzman, who directed the movie, is an amazing artist, and he did the sort of sketches of what the Djinn would look like. And when I saw that, I thought, how are you going to do that? But they did. They managed to do it. So the first time the makeup went on, let's see, I believe we were 4.5 hours. And of course I had to come in probably about 3:30 in the morning. And the first, I got used to it. The first day I was so giddy, I was so excited about it. About when we got into, say, about a couple of weeks of filming, and I'd go in at 3 in the morning and I'd see that brush with the dab of glue coming toward me. I know it was gonna be cold as heck. I'd say, okay, here we go, and I'd have to put my mind into another place. We got it down to about 2 hours 45, 3 hours, if it weren't including the full body makeup.
So if it was just the bust piece,
right,
or whatever.
Just the bust, and you'd see the chest plate and the arms and so forth, and got to do all of the the acting from the waist up.
In the first film, you get to be one of my favorite trivia answers of all time, and that is, has there ever been a horror character who has killed Jason Voorhees, Freddy Krueger, and the Candyman? You take out 3 horror icons. That's a bold statement for a movie in 97?
97,
was the first
yes
one?
sir.
That's a bold statement for a film. Were you a fan of any of those 3 movies before?
Indeed, and a bigger fan afterward, having met the guys. I remember we were all together in street clothes, and we took a sort of a publicity shot all together. And I remember that the guy taking a picture made the mistake of asking, I think, and Tony Todd was the first answer. He said, "So if you monsters were to really fight," and Tony said, no, we're not going there, man. We're not going to do that. And so there was respect, great respect among the brethren monsters to this day. And so we remained friends, all of us, and it's wonderful every time I see them. Been a while since I've seen Robert, but I look forward to seeing him soon, hopefully. I know he caught a bout of COVID and was down for a little bit.
Yep.
Had it pretty badly, as I understand.
That's what I was told.
No, listen, I've got nothing but thanks to my big monster brothers for welcoming in a new, untried monster. I mean, it was hats off to them, you know.
Now, Wishmaster itself in 97, great film.
Thank you.
Often when we get a follow-up to it, we see the weak points. Wishmaster 2 does not feel that way. It feels very much like, okay, well, how do we outdo ourselves last time? In doing horror sequels, is that something that was a conscious thing on your plates? Because we've already had how many Jasons, how many Freddys down the road by the time you're going into your second one. Is that a conscious thing that you're fearful of, watching of, respectful of? What?
You always, as an actor, I'll speak for myself, I was hoping to respect the first piece while understanding that we were progressing, we were evolving. This was some 2 years plus after we had done the first. I think, well, of course, with Jack Shoulder writing and directing, of course, you know, we have another icon right there who came aboard and brought his chops to the second Wishmaster. I think the second one was a little more devious, if you will, a little more trickstery, a little more proud of his how clever he was.
Up the numbers quite a bit as far as kill counts, because you just slayed a raft through that prison system there, just taking out everybody.
And you'll remember he needed 1,001 souls.
1,001.
Right.
Just, I know that there are 2 other sequels. I don't want to talk about those. What I want to talk about is, did or did you not, I've heard a rumor that you helped write a treatment for what you wanted to see out of a third one.
Myself and Russell Gannon, a friend of mine, co-wrote number 3 and presented it to production. And I don't know why, but I think at that time, so it may have been the fact that Artisan was going to Lionsgate. They were getting sort of assumed into the Lionsgate stable. And perhaps, I don't know, perhaps the new guys weren't too sure how it would do or what they could do with it, so they diminished the budget, and that hurt. It hurt the feelings, and I found that out subsequently. When I had mentioned that I was going to write number 3 with a friend and present it, everyone was very excited, I think most of all me, because I'm thinking, wow, this is going to be great. And then coming in, it was obvious that what we had included was going to be so much as far as the specials money-wise. For instance, we opened with a party at the United Nations, and although that building doesn't have any gargoyles, well, in our movie it does. And the gargoyles come down and join the party and have some fun, so they start ripping it up right away. It was a bit of a heartbreaker to find that once they presented what they wanted, it was so devoid of specials that I thought I just couldn't do that with a straight face to the fans, because it had built up a fan base, and you know, the fans want to see Djinn magic. They don't necessarily want the character talking about the magic. If you get my drift, yeah.
The best way that I've heard the other sequels referred to as, it's like we had 2 great Djinn movies and then he got neutered.
Oh.
And
yeah.
I'm like, yeah, it does feel a bit like that. Some of that, everything that you brought to that table does feel. Is there, I know it's a few years later.
Yeah. Yes.
But legacy sequels are a giant thing now, where they bring back original characters as if some of those sequels aren't deleted. Is there still a chance that we could see your 3rd jump in line here as the newest sequel?
I would love that. But as you know, the curious thing, the ironic thing, the Wishmaster can't make wishes.
Yeah.
But as Andrew Divoff, I would certainly make that wish. Absolutely, I would love that to happen.
Maybe if we wished hard enough, all of us could get it to happen.
There you go. And of course, I get some more souls, so that would help. Bank some more souls, absolutely. Yeah. So no, but to answer it succinctly, yes, I'd love to do, and call it number 5 or call it number 3. And by the way, having said that, I have respect for my fellow actors who came in and tried to pick up the baton and run with it, and you know what, that was brave, and they did a brave thing, because of course
it's hard to step into somebody else's shoes.
It's very hard, and the biggest critics, besides themselves, I suppose, are the fans. And the fans, you can't kid the fans. You can't fool them.
No. Yeah. One of the things about your IMDb list is the continuous work. And that's what I love to see, especially people who I am a fan of.
Thank you.
I love that they are still working. What it also falls into is that different generations and different people are going to recognize you from completely different things.
Yes.
I'm telling my wife before the con who I get to interview this weekend. I mention your name. She says, that sounds familiar. Pull up your photo. This is what she says to me. She says, he looks really familiar. Has he ever played a Russian character?
A couple.
Talking about your blink and miss it roles, we scroll through and we see Russian guard, Russian prisoner, Russian... Yes. So I'm like, yes, lots of them. And it took her a while, and she lands on the Blacklist.
Yes.
So your role, any Blacklist fans in here? Yeah. There we go.
Thank you, guys.
Your role in the Blacklist, can we talk about, was that something your agent was able to bring forward? Was that something, because I know that the producers behind the Blacklist had been known to reach out to some actors for roles. Is that one that you were specifically tapped? Or did you go audition?
Happy to tell you that yes, I was tapped for that, and it blew my mind that this amazing show would reach out to me and say, basically check availability, say are you available? And I'm thinking, well, do I need to rob a bank? What do I need to do? Where do I need to go? Who do I talk to? But they offered. I did and I think that was the first, only because of not being anywhere near where they were filming. I put something down on film, which now has become, you know, the Zoom thing because of the COVID and all of that has become very prevalent. But at that time it wasn't. And I got the word back that, yeah, you got it. And I thought, wow. And as you guys know, who are fans of The Blacklist, there had been an actor that was playing that role, Karacourt, who had already been playing. And then I think what had happened is that one of his family members got direly ill and was living in Spain, and so he had to leave and go sort of be a caregiver. And I found that out subsequently, didn't find it out before doing the role, and I was, you know, that was just in itself so selfless, you know, and I'm ever thankful to have been able to do that role. I had a lot of fun. I started out as a stuntman, and I got to do some stunts in that show, and yeah, and just being in New York, you know, goodness, for I guess a total of about 6 weeks, it was truly a blast. I'm a lucky guy.
I think luck can carry you quite a way. You have the talent to back up the luck with it, and that's where it goes. Let's go into a few more films of yours. Speaking of Russian characters, The Hunt for Red October.
Yes, yes.
Working with the likes of Alec Baldwin, Sean Connery.
Well, seeing them anyway.
You have this, when I look through your IMDb, this happens quite often for you, where you'll work with an actor on a film such as Hunt for Red October, and then a decade later, you work with them again on another project.
Yes.
Is it reunion time for you? Do they recall, like what you said, you saw Connery and Baldwin?
Yes.
Did you, in working with anyone a second time, was it I remember you, or was it you had to explain?
You know, one of the most amazing actors, Harrison Ford. He was such a gentleman to me, and really Harrison loves to do his own stunts as well. And as a matter of fact, he told me, he said, call me Harry, because I made the mistake of calling him Mr. Ford, and he says, Mr. Ford is my dad. He says, call me Harry. So I was hired to do the fight by Wolfgang Peterson, and he said to me, he said, I came in, I thought, oh good, I get to talk about the character and maybe changing it up. Well, I came in, and I said, I wanted to start talking. He said, yeah. So this is Wolfgang Peterson. He said, yeah, so we have a very important role, and you have a fight with Harrison Ford. Do you think you can do it? And I said, yeah, I can do that. And then I started to talk about what we could do for the character, and he listened for about a second and a half, and he says, yeah, so we have a very important fight with Harrison Ford. Do you think you can do it? And in my mind, I said, okay, shut up and just say yes. I said, yes, I can do it. 10 years later, after doing that show, of course, 97 to 2007, Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
I come to the set the first day in New Mexico, and we're shooting the big warehouse scene. And Mr. Ford, don't tell him I called him that. Mr. Ford looks up, he looks over, he goes, Andy! And he comes right, and that blew my mind. I mean, I'm definitely not on the same list as Harry. And so for him to look up and say Andy and remember, I mean, what a genuinely cool guy. Another thing I remember about Air Force One and Mr. Ford, there had to be a crew of probably about 175 people, and he knew everybody by name.
Wow.
He would come in the morning, and I remember getting asked by the extras. I started out as an extra, stuntman extra, and I remember the kids sitting around and saying to me, well, what should we do? Should we get into an acting class? And at that very moment, Mr. Ford walked on the set, and this was the set with the 747 on a rig that they could manipulate.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'll tell you what. I said, every time this gentleman comes on the set, watch him. Watch what he does. And of course he comes on, he says, hey Harry, hey Bob. And I remember the first time that they gimbaled the set, that's what he was coming in for that day, to see how that would work. And so mind you, this is a full-size 747 set on hydraulics, and with a guy with a joystick who could sort of manipulate the platform. And so Harrison wanted to see how that would work. And there happened to be if you remember where the fight scene was, there happened to be an area that was a kind of a pit. It was a foot below the platform, and it had all of these hose bibs and dangerous looking stuff. And so Mr. Ford stood there. He wanted to feel the sort of the jolt, see how much it would be. Well, the guy made the mistake of gimbaling it the wrong way. And you know, inertia and so forth. So if you move something this way, whatever's standing on it is going to go that way.
Yeah.
Well, the guy made the mistake of moving it that way, threw Harrison into the pit. And his head just missed one of those bibs, one of those brass metal bibs. And the whole, I mean, now you got a set. Everybody showed up to see how this thing worked. Now you've got about 100 people sitting around wondering, is he going to make it? What happened? Is he hurt? And so the set slowly comes back to level. Harry gets up, dusts himself off, and looks at the guy and says, "Hey, Bob, let's do this right." That's all he said. That's all he said. And from that point on, holy goodness, man. And when it came to the fight, having waited 4 months and sitting around, basically kind of sitting out of the way, didn't want to get in the way, all of a sudden it's the fight, and we do the first couple of things, and I get thrown into a pit, and I shoot up with this I believe it was an MK5, and all of a sudden, I mean, Harrison looks at me and he goes, "Yeah." And he was charged up. You can tell he was juiced up. And Mr. Peterson, the director, comes by and he goes, "Andrew, very nice job." And so we continued with it until so we do the choke out. And I remember doing the choke out. Harrison's got me, and all of a sudden, I mean, I'm fighting, and we're sort of seeing how it's going to work, and I go out. I literally go out from the chokehold. And all I remember, and they say that you come out of passing out, you kind of come out the same way you went down. So I remember before getting choked out, Harrison made a joke. Next thing I know, I'm kind of sliding down the wall, kind of like, I don't know, kind of like a piece of spaghetti sliding down the wall. I just felt all just wobbly. And I remember, and I heard Harrison say, "Oh boy, well, I guess we're going to close up for today." And all of a sudden I started to laugh. I just kind of woke back up and I was laughing, and he's looking at me and he says, "You all right, kid?" And I said, Yeah, I'm good. I said, "Yeah, you're pretty good at that chokehold thing." And so we hit it off from that point. He was an absolute gentleman, and so that's the highlight of my having met an actor, and then a decade later working with him, and him remembering my name blew my mind. But what a genuinely good dude he is. And I understand he's doing signings now himself, so make sure when you see him, tell him Andy said hi.
Oh, in a heartbeat,
Yeah.
I will throw.
And don't call him, well, tell him I called him Mr. Ford. Let's see what he says.
There are movies that come along that everyone in the cast, and it shows up on film, just were meant to play the characters that they were meant to play, and they become pivotal moments for a generation of people. There's a film called Toy Soldiers.
Oh boy.
That everyone I know, when you mention that movie, gets that same reaction. Oh, Toy Soldiers. I want to know the process of being in that, getting that. Was that another audition because that was pretty early on, or was that something your agent was like, look, this is a bunch of young people, this is something you need to be in?
Well, you know, that I was lucky. I was, let's see, at that time, I think, yeah, I was working on Graveyard Shift. And I remember that John Esposito, who took Stephen King's story and adapted it to the movie, he was a friend of Ralph Singleton, who was also, by the way, was also I believe he was the unit production manager on Another 48 Hours. Long story short.
The other one that you were a part of,
yes.
You jumped in the sequel. Okay, yes.
And so he reached out to Ralph Singleton, and then he said, I think we got a guy. So it's this sort of six degrees of separation. And I think Daniel Petrie happened to be a friend of Ralph's, and Ralph called me and said, "You know what? I think we got a guy for your movie who can do that." Because I remember Ralph asking me, "Can you really speak Spanish? Do you really speak?" And I said, "Yeah, it's my first language." So he goes, "Okay," and I thought, well, odd question, didn't think much of it. Come to find out later, while we're filming, while we're up in Bangor, Maine. I take a plane ride down to New York, meet Mr. Petrie, I did the scene, and he says, Daniel, the director, and I says to me, can you tone the accent down a little bit? And now, mind you, kids, this was 5 pages of dialogue that I had sort of tailored to this accent. And I said, well, can I have, 10 minutes? Can you give me 10 minutes? So I walked out in the hallway, and I'm nervous as hell. And I'm thinking, oh man, I love this role. So I came back, and I had toned the accent down, and they told me, they said, as soon as they saw what I could do with the accent, and they said, that was it. I found out, I flew back up to Bangor, found out, I think, 2 days later that I had gotten it. I was so happy about that. The story it meant a lot. This terrorist, this bad guy, who was doing everything because he loved his dad, and he wanted to make sure he got his dad out of prison. And of course the kids, you guys will remember Sean Astin, Will Wheaton, Keith Coogan, that whole crew. They were so great, and I felt so bad because I didn't want to. They'd always ask me, hey, we're going out for dinner. You want to come out to dinner? I didn't want to break that wall that not before the end of the movie, as it turned out. I didn't want to love these kids. I didn't want to get close and say, hey, how you doing? I wanted to stay in character, if you will.
Yeah.
What a beautiful time that was, I must tell you.
Is that your approach often when you're playing villains or
No.
darker roles? Do you always put that separation?
No, I don't. I mean, I can handle the separation in my mind. What I didn't know, what I wasn't sure about was these kids, and they were kids. I wasn't sure how they would handle it and how they would interpret my connection. And so I stayed away.
Okay.
Yeah.
So out of benefit for your fellow performer, you were like, I don't want to break that wall for you.
Yes, and also, and a benefit that inured to me. Yeah.
You mentioned Graveyard Shift, another foray into horror, which we love Stephen King in our horror community as well.
Of course.
Were you a fan of Stephen King's work? Was that something that you were like, okay, I definitely want to get? That was the heyday of every Stephen King adaptation that could come out.
Yep. Every
Every studio was trying to swallow up all of it. So was that something you were going, I need to find a Stephen King adaptation?
No. Again, I was lucky enough to, boy, here we go with the 6 degrees, the connection with Another 48 Hours, and then of course with John Esposito, who wrote the adaptation of that. And it was all a matter, and I can't even imagine what goes on behind the scenes, so to speak. But a phone call says, yeah, we got your guy, in a place that is notoriously difficult to get work in, Hollywood. I've been so lucky with that. And I must say, my first day on the set, Mr. King came down to the set, and as you know, it's kind of like the jokes we make about cops. If you want to find a cop, go to a donut shop, right? Find them having a cup of coffee and a donut. Well, if you want to find an actor, go to the craft table, go to the craft service table. They'll be around looking for candy bars and goodies. So I remember I'm looking at the food, and it's about lunchtime. I look over, and Mr. King is to my right, and I'm trying to think of something clever to say, and that never happened. So I just turned around and said, hello, Mr. King. It's nice to meet you. And he looked at me, had his glasses on, kind of looked at me and nodded, and then looked back at the food. but I hope he liked the finished product. Maybe said to himself, oh, that's that obnoxious kid that was at the food table.
You mentioned that you can do the Spanish accent because you know the language, because you were born in Venezuela. You speak 8 languages?
I speak 8, yes indeed. Yes.
What is the list?
Most of the Romance languages. As a matter of fact, you guys know Duolingo? Yes. Anybody do the Duolingo thing? Cool. So I'm doing Latin at my table. If you see me poking away at the phone,
That's what you're doing?
I'm doing Latin right now, just because I'll do my languages. So the list is Spanish, French, Portuguese, Catalan. I was lucky enough to live in Barcelona for 5 years. And of course, I lived there at a time when Franco and his sort of presence was still overwhelming. And at that time, you weren't allowed to speak Catalan in school or in the church or anywhere else. So of course, I had to learn it. And I remember they would sing songs. They'd get together in basements and sing songs that were called habaneras, meaning coming from Havana. Now, if you remember the Spanish-American War, and in most wars, the dregs are sent, or the people who really figure, okay, well, I'm fighting for the country, and they might be getting the wool pulled over their eyes. Well, it was the Catalans who were not in the king's favor, so to speak. They were sent to fight in the war, and they would, in the evenings, they'd get together and sing songs about Havana. They'd write and sing and invent songs about Havana and their experience there. And so that was brought back to Spain, and I was lucky enough to go down and hear these songs and be able to understand and participate a little bit, though one thing you don't want is to hear me sing. Believe me, that's not a good thing.
Well, there goes my follow-up question.
Yeah, please hit us with a habanero.
Yeah, come on, just hit us with your fate. One of the other things in researching about you that I love is that you were a brewmaster. You had your own brewery, and you were doing specific brews for charity, or you were doing events brewing?
Yes, indeed. That was the first foray into the brewing. And by the way, guys, this is my shirt. Let me just give you the full-on logo.
Now you can see it all.
So for a while there, when things were slow, I was running a logging crew. I live up in the mountains. And this was '03, and it happened to be the bark beetle infestation. And so you'll notice that the artwork here, these are logs, and my brewery is called 3 Marm. A marm is the crotch in a tree where the trunk splits into other trunks. In this case, a 3 Marm. And so the Roman numeral 3, and then the M with the silhouette in the center of the marm, yeah. And so my first brew was a tribute to the Djinn, and it was called Djinn's Hellebrew. And it was a Belgian golden strong ale, 7.5%, spiced with roasted habanero and Persian lime. And absolutely delicious beer, if I say so myself. And it would make a heck of what I call a bloody beer. You know, add some clamato and you're in heaven. So I was invited out to Rock and Shock, and this was in 2014. And Gino was a friend, Gino Migliozzi, who ran the show. And you know, having been there at that show, I think this was my 4th time, I said, let's do something different. Let's, I know you have charities that you support. I have my own, which is Smile Train. Nothing better than to see a smile. I mean, that is the international language. You smile at somebody, and whether they understand what you speak or not, they understand a smile. So I thought, how precious is it for a kid who might be born with a cleft palate to be able to one day smile and feel confident about that smile. So anyway, that was my thing. And so that was the first time that we brewed the Djinn Hellebrew because I wanted to keep it oriented to the genre. And I remember coming out, and I would have been happy to sell $500 worth of it. We did $1,500, and she raised money for the Dave Brokey Foundation. You'll remember Dave Brokey from Guar, of course. And then there was the Pat Brody Cat Shelter that she also raised money for. And I was happy and lucky enough to raise my money for Smile Train. Yeah, and the beer, I'm still brewing it. I'm no longer at a brick and mortar, but I'll be doing distribution. I think I'm gonna, you know, just locally, keep it local, but I love the art, the craft of brewing beer. It is so amazing.
Pick up the Djinn one again.
I'm thinking probably going to be a while, brother. At least 6 months. I'm going to be paying taxes and fees for a little bit. Leftover hurts from having had the brick and mortar, but I would say 6 months to 8.
All right. Wonderful. We'll keep a lookout for that.
Thank you, brother.
I started this interview talking about the beginning of your career with the list of all these amazing TV shows that were pivotal at the time that you were blinking you missed roles.
Right.
Let's fast forward to your television career as of recently, where we mentioned Blacklist, but you show up on Burn Notice, Jag, Nikita, The Strain, Alias, and Lost.
Yes.
You, either through, like you said, luck, or just you are the right person always, you keep being a part of these amazing projects that will last for generations to come. If I can ask about Lost, was that some that agents sought out, or was, because you came on later?
I did.
So you would have had a chance to have seen Lost. Were you already a fan? What was it?
You know, the truth of it is, I did have a chance to see it, and I didn't. And in fact, April Webster cast the show, and so at that time, she reached out to the agent and said, we'd like to see him for Lost again. And I had other outreaches for Lost. And at this time, as I mentioned to you, I was logging, and I was making good money, cash. SoCal Edison, down where I am, down in the mountains there, they had the contract for the whole mountains to eradicate the bark beetle. And we'd go out every day, and we'd be, you know, cutting trees down. I had a great climber cutter. Kid was a monkey. I mean, the fastest guy on the mountain. And of course, when you're bringing a tree down, you go up, you slash the branches. Those come down. Mind you, the climber cutter has his ropes on the ground. So I was a glorified ground man, is what I'd do. I'd get the contracts, and then as the branches fall, I got to call out man under, because, you know, unfortunately, a lot of newbies came out at that time. I remember there was a kid from Kansas and a team of loggers who came out from Kansas. It's different in the mountains, man. You ain't in Kansas any longer. And I remember, God bless that kid. He didn't call out man under, and of course, probably an 8-foot piece of tree came down, having slashed the branches. He went under to move the ropes and got hit and got planted by that piece of tree. Ended up, I guess, unfortunately survived, and ended up you know, and we remember him to this day. You know, and he's alive. He's back in Kansas, but a tough job. But so I said to my agent, I said, you know what, leave me alone. I'm working. I'm making good money. I'm good. Call me when there's something interesting. And he says, this is something interesting. And by the way, April said to tell you that if you say no to this, she won't call anymore. And this was the 6th time that I would have said no. So I said, okay, whatever, I'll read it and I'll go in. I read it, and it was wonderful. It was nothing that was ever in the show. The scene had to do with my character, Mikhail Bakunin, named after a Russian anarchist philosopher of the 19th century. So I read the scene, and it was kind of cool. It sort of foreboding of what was to come in Lost. And I remember so he's called in because he's done something wrong, and they didn't give me the script, just the scene. But I knew enough, so I'm in there, and the Admiral is telling me, you know, you messed up, and you're gonna pay, and you may pay with your life. And there was a line that Mikhail was supposed to say, and Mr. Abrams, J.J. Abrams, was in the room. And I remember before going in, it was funny, I didn't know who J.J. was, I'd never met him or seen him. But I remember a guy, kind of a kid-looking guy, coming out into the hallway, peeking out, and kind of taking a look at me and then going back in, and I thought, well, that was odd. And so you always know when you're doing well in an audition by the way people move, or if, you know, they chitter, but the mannerisms. You can read a room, so to speak. And so when that line came up, I decided not to say it. And essentially what he's saying is, you know, you've basically signed your own death warrant. And then I had some quippish line that I thought, totally, I mean, you didn't need words. And so what I did is what I just did there. I took a deep breath, and I looked at the Admiral, and I just shook my head, resolved that what I had done was the right thing. What I had done apparently had saved everybody on the submarine, but it was totally against the rules. So I could tell that the minute I did that, JJ sort of did this kind of, he had his arms folded and he unfolded his arms, and so I could tell he was getting excited, so I knew I was there. Yeah. But that was a life changer, that role. And one of the biggest parts of it was the Hawaiian crew. And if you can imagine, what a lucky thing to be in Hawaii, getting paid to be in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So absolutely wonderful. And I gotta tell you, the food, always looked forward to lunch. It was the best. But guess what the crew would do? They would show up with their surfboards.
Oh.
Yeah, and when lunch was called, no time for lunch, they'd bring their own sandwich, they'd go surfing. It was so absolutely wonderful.
I love it.
Wonderful, and just beautiful people.
Talking about your amazing career, we've got to look forward, and I know that you recently wrapped or are wrapping a project with horror icon Heather Langenkamp.
Oh,
I have been lucky enough to chat with Miss Langenkamp. She's an amazing person and a wonderful performer. I believe the film is called Stalked.
Yes, Stalked. And it's
when can we look forward to it? What is it about? What is your role in it? What can you say?
We just finished filming. I believe they just finished Principal, and by the way, I wasn't lucky enough to work with Miss Langenkamp, and I cannot, having read the script and knowing what her role is, I cannot wait to see what she did with it.
Oh.
I saw the look, I saw a picture of her in the makeup, and she wasn't even looking at camera, and it was weird and creepy, beautifully so. So I think I'm really, really looking forward to that. And the role that I got to play, totally out of character, if you will, for the roles that I play. And you look at the guy, and of course you'll see some residual. I had shaved the side of my head and had tattoos on both sides. And so you look at this guy and you figure, oh man, there's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. And as it turns out, well, I'm not going to spoil it.
Oh.
I will say no more. Suffice it to say, I loved it. Great cast and crew. And very brave producers. Very brave to pull me in for a role like that. And to be sure that I was the right choice, and I'm ever thankful. I can't wait till you guys see it.
You, sir, are not only a tremendous talent, but you are an honest and genuine human being who, when talking about your love of this work, it's just inspiring to hear. So I want to thank you very much for joining us at Sinister CreatureCon today.
Not at all, not at all.
I want to thank all of you for coming. Let's give a round of applause.
Thank you so much. Before guys, I love that clapping. Some more, please. Before we go, let me just do one thing.
Oh, please.
Let me ask you all to close your eyes and take a little trip with me, if you will. Close your eyes. While your eyes are closed, put your wallets on your right knee. No, listen, keep your eyes closed, and I'm going to take us all on a fun little thing. Run. Run, insect. Run and tell those you will what you will. Tell them there is something loose in their city. Something which feeds on wishes. But tell them quickly while you still have a soul. Thank you, kids.
Do me a favor, please go join him over at his table, get some autographs, talk to him in person, do yourself that favor and meet this man. Have a great rest of your con.
Thank you, sir. You kicked Bahundi. Beautiful question.